Hey folks, Steve here with another Reluctant Enemies video for you. We're going to be doing at least turns 3 and 4 in this video, perhaps beyond, depending on the speed at which I operate and how little I talk about it. I've actually cheated a little bit, and I've played through the first half of turn 3, which happened to be Commonwealth Initiative again. The Allies won the initiative roll and decided to go first yet again, though, again, I know, going second can sometimes have great benefits. We're kind of on a roll of momentum where every turn we manage to go, Vichy is using their turn to try to get things back in order. And so long as we can keep going before they do, they seem to be having trouble keeping up. As it stands right now, with the actions that I took, we did manage to get a really good supply roll, and all of it went into Haifa and was the source of all the action along the coast, supported by, well, I should mark these, used the artillery of the Navy and then other artillery as used by the ground forces there, which just have pummeled the Vichy forces and have forced now a very general retreat away, a significant retreat away from the main lines, and now really putting these forces in trouble for the Vichy. They have this poor artillery, which is now dreadfully out of supply. Well, I guess technically, let's see. Ooh, yeah, they're going to have problems with trace supply here soon, which could be a big, massive problem for these guys. They need to figure something out. Nearby, well, maybe they can trace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that could be a problem. So they're going to have these guys are going to have to do something to get back over here. We have a mechanized unit sitting with the HQ and an artillery unit basically by itself, DG'd. So there's definitely a major problem. The artillery is running for the hills, and the Commonwealth continues to, fight down the way here. They are reaching kind of the extent of their supply network, and we're going to have to move the Australian HQ up, and we're going to have to be bringing supply in. The one challenge for the Commonwealth is that their rail line ends just north of Haifa, so anything we want to bring up to extend the push to Beirut is going to be heavily reliant on the trucks shuttling supply further north from Haifa. So I need to get some of my trucks over that direction and be operating, and those guys still need to be trying to provide supply to our center lane, and I'm just not sure where it's going to be coming from, honestly. The best thing that we can do is when we get supply and we can rail it to here and then use that as our path north. So it's going to be really hard to keep the center lane supplied, to be honest. I have a lot of forces there, but the Wilson HQ, I just don't know how well they're going to be able to maintain that drive. And there is some defenses set up here. We're probably going to have to play shifting forces as the Vichy, because at this point, Beirut has basically, not counting the artillery, 1, 2, 3 units protecting it. And we've got some nearby guys that can kind of scoot over, but only so many steps to hold, and really not much more in the way of reinforcements that are going to be coming in. Now, this turn, we do get some reinforcements. And in fact, this is the last real bucket of reinforcements that we can expect to get as the Vichy. The Commonwealth still has quite a number of reinforcements that are going to be coming in. So as long as the Commonwealth can maintain this drive, like they have momentum in the coast, due in large part from their artillery gains, it's going to be really hard for the Vichy to make any progress in the reverse. The center lane may hold for a while. We'll have to see. And then Damascus is kind of interesting. This whole lane down here, we're starting to move north. These guys are kind of besieged. None of the attacks I felt were really good-looking ones. So we're kind of forcing these guys to either try to spend their supply to attack or to merely buy themselves time and eat off the map. Same thing with this poor guy. He's not going to last much longer. And we're holding this critical juncture here at Santa Mine. And I'm not willing to push too much farther because our supply is starting to have trouble um, being able to be sent forward like that. So we're really, while it feels like the Commonwealth is on this great roll, we really got to watch our supply network and really watch the situation because it could very easily fall apart on us. There are a whole bunch of Vichy units up here, but there's a question of like, okay, do we sail down south to meet the Commonwealth in the desert, or do we make use of this defensive terrain? Because even the Vichy don't have uh, that much slack in the rope to operate with. The artillery is certainly useful. They could burn up a lot of supply, but if they put their units at risk or things go pear-shaped on them or they get, say, surrounded in the desert and eliminated, it makes Damascus that much easier to take. So really hard to determine what to do here. The Commonwealth, there's a clear, set of operations we're executing to make progress. But for the Vichy, it's just, we've been on the backslide. It's that downward spiral. If you can't get out of the hole of losing units faster than you can replace them, that tends to be the recipe for disaster. And the fact that Vichy really doesn't get much in the way of replacements or reinforcements the way the Commonwealth does, they're already deep in the hole, incredibly deep in the hole. The Commonwealth has enjoyed pretty good die rolls throughout. Um, the one thing I will say is on both sides, I haven't been making use of reserves as much because it seems like every unit I have is being used to either just force the situation or to hold the line. And I don't have a preponderance of force to actually feel like I have a decent reserve. I may be able to do more reserves here in the center lane soon, but that's very circumstantial. So it could be that maybe the Vichy forces need to force the issue against uh, the Commonwealth and hope that they run out of supply or something, and the defensive expenditure is such that the Vichy can slow them down that way. I don't know. Spoiling attacks, you could think of them, right? Not sure. Anyway, that was the sort of review of the Commonwealth half of the turn. We're going to go over to the Vichy and play through that. Okay, here we are after the Vichy action for the June 12th turn 3 turn. There was an attempt to try to take out that French armor, and that failed spectacularly. So these guys are kind of at the end of their rope here very soon. This guy continues to try to run away. He's basically got one more token left to eat, and then he's kind of in bad shape. I've been thinking, do we try to save this one unit? And I don't know that we do. I think our readout near Kiswe is probably still our best bet, and we might need to send some units and spread out a little bit, but that's going to continue to come to a head. Here, we would have tried to make a stronger offensive against the Commonwealth, but the artillery missed on those cavalry, so we just didn't feel comfortable enough trying to make that attack. So much for that. And then over here, we did get some DGs, but the attack across the river ended up not working out, and the Vichy actually had to retreat. I should point out that the Vichy now have a whole bunch more air, and so they kind of control the skies at the moment. I had lost my Commonwealth fighter over Haifa. Maybe the Vichy, instead of trying to barrage units, should be trying to bomb Haifa, but I didn't do that. We just didn't get very good DG rolls. We got a little bit. We hit the spearhead of the Commonwealth attack on the coast, which will slow things down a bit. But I think what's probably going to happen is the Commonwealth will use their next turn to kind of get in a better position, build up some supply, probably put some sort of reserve marker on those guys, and kind of have them ready to operate going into the next turn. Of course, I suppose it depends on who gets to go next. in the turn order, but we'll see that soon enough. The other interesting thing was when the Vichy forces try to attack here, this stack is actually not in throw range of our Australian HQ in move mode, but as it turns out, they are in throw range of the Wilson HQ. So, um, that turns out that's just fine for the moment. Or I'm treating that as fine. I think that's okay. So yeah, it's just a different, kind of a tough situation to draw that combat supply. There might be some rule against that. I'll have to double check, but in that particular instance of needing to do combat supply, I threw it from that HQ from the depot here, and that seemed to work okay. But things are tight, and definitely seeing like where can we get supply. We are definitely going to have to move our Australian HQ up, but at the same time, we're going to have to be shuttling the supply points north. So I definitely see this next turn, at least for these two lanes, as this next coming turn for the Commonwealth as preparation turns. Here, we could still see some offensive action trying to wrap things up and prepare for the approach to Damascus, but that's kind of up in the air. Again, who goes first in this next turn could be a bit more important, but we'll see when we come back for the cut into turn 4, which would be the June 14th turn. Okay, so here we are after the Vichy turn. So the Vichy forces won initiative, so they're basically getting to go twice in a row. Unfortunately, I really couldn't capitalize that, especially on being on defense. What that did allow us to do was get into a slightly better position across the board, and I feel a lot more confident about our ability to hold our lines right now. I did try to spend some supply doing an artillery strike that didn't work out, and I figured rather than use up more supply trying to attack, we would wait, we'd store up some more supply. So despite the effect of being on defense here, the Vichy is actually not doing that badly. So when you go to count victory points right now, and maybe I should put some markers out to show where the victory points are. Ultimately, maybe I'll do that later. The Commonwealth only has 3 victory points, and if we look at the back of the victory determination here, well, if we can keep the victory points at 5 or less, we're at 3 now, then we have a crushing Vichy victory. So right now, it's about holding territory. I mean, while it is conceivable that the Vichy forces could somehow get a breakthrough and get down here and win the game via an auto victory, they win the game by just kind of holding on. So right now, the Damascus front is going slowly. The center lane is kind of bogging down into a stalemate, and via the power of artillery and air power and different things, the Vichy are holding at the Sidon site. They don't have the town or the village of Sidon, but they do have a defense basically on the other side of the river. So they have an opportunity here to kind of hold steady as best they can, and I think that's okay. So we could be entering a lull period where both sides are trying to rebuild their supply stockpiles for further offensives, looking for those opportunities. We'll probably see a slow march up the roads in Syria here so that we're not wasting supply on gassing up units and just sort of steadily making progress. We do need to finish this up. They still could live off of this supply dump for a while, so it's kind of hard to say, when some of this stuff's going to loosen up, but it is slowing down the Commonwealth advance, and there's value in that. So, so far so good. Ultimately, now I'm going to go over to the Commonwealth turn, and we'll see what they can do, if anything. It may be a quick quiet turn. Okay, here we are at the first half of turn 5. The Commonwealth got to go again, and they did make some selective pushes. Our supply is really constraining us, so what we've done, we forced this remnant unit out of Swedia, and he's going to die. And then the rest of these guys are starting to move forward. slowly walking, trying to keep supply expenditure to a minimum. Everywhere else, there's a rough progression of units getting into place. This is going to be Thunder Valley here before long. But then on the coast, we took another swing. So with our regular combat, we got across the river, managed to do that, and then we released some of our armor from reserve and did an overrun, um, and then had to retreat. And we did do some damage, and I need to see. I need to double check the rules really quick. Like, okay, we retreated. Are we done moving? Can we go again? Assuming we have enough movement points, because it is conceivable we could try to go again, because the objective is to try to get right into the face of the Vichy units there, and basically have it where those artillery need to get the heck out of Dodge, and we'd like to cut this guy out of supply as well if we can. So I'm going to have to look at that. But generally, we soaked up a lot of supply doing the attacks and to get all those guys fueled up to operate. So that's kind of a tricky bit here. We can still maybe do more damage. I need to double check the rules on that. I'm going to go do that now. Okay, I did double check, and you folks who know the rules well would have known this right away. If an overrunning stack chooses to retreat, then they're done. I would rather have them take the option from that combat to retreat, because I don't want to lose any of that stack. I really do prefer them to remain strong. So we'll make it, the slow and steady wins the race, so to speak, and we'll slowly um, work our way through the situation. So I think we're pretty good. We're getting over that river line at Sidon, and that's kind of the real key factor here for us moving forward. Definitely need to do that, and then that really leaves one more. If we can maintain our control over that second river line, that just means there's one more at Demore, and if we can get across that, then the Vichy will be in real trouble, because we'll be fighting basically on the outskirts of Beirut. While everything else, I mean, it feels like Damascus has a ton of forces, but you got to understand they're against a lot of Commonwealth and Free French forces that I can't simply evacuate Damascus at this point. I could try to send a few other units over, but it's pretty tough. Really, the Vichy are getting whittled away. The other thing to keep in mind is there's a whole bunch of Commonwealth reinforcements coming, so it's a nail biter, guys. I still kind of feel like it'll be a Commonwealth victory. But let me get to the second half of turn 5 with the Vichy, and we'll see what they can do. I don't expect them to do any real offensive maneuvers. I think they need to figure out, where are they going to defend next? Where can they go that's safe? Do they retreat back to the river line? That's probably what they're going to need to do, but we'll see. Okay, here just showing the aftermath of the turn 5 Vichy turn. Nothing much happened here other than some movement of some new supply that came in. Vichy actually got an excellent supply roll, got a lot more supply, divvied that up to the different fronts, and then we did try some barrages. We did succeed with an air barrage on the tip of the spear of the Commonwealth there. That was more of a spoiling attack to ensure that their primary upfront stack is DG'd. It doesn't mean that their other forces nearby can't make something happen, but that at least kind of puts a lot of that stack out of commission, so to speak. We also moved up some reconstituted units. So it continues to be, holding on, putting a lot of effort into defending the coast. Everywhere else is kind of quiet. We're trying to pull supply together, figure out the right arrangement for defense, knowing that, things will heat up here shortly. But, ultimately, Vichy's playing for time, so that kind of works out okay. Yeah, that's it. So we're going to go into turn 6, which will be the last turn that I cover, I think, in this video. 4 turns is significant, which also means we're kind of getting into, we're like a third, a quarter of the way through the game, and it's starting to go by more quickly. So what I'll probably do after I play through turn 6 and to show you the snippets and status, is do a little mini, thoughts segment here, on kind of where I'm at with this particular game. So we'll get there in just a few minutes. Okay, very quickly checking in after the Vici turn for turn 6, which was not super eventful. They got a low roll on supply, which was still a supply point. They divvied that up, and then they made some additional attempts at barrages. Those missed, but they did attack north of Sidon, or Sidon, however that's appropriately pronounced. And they got damn lucky, man. I think Vici's been waiting for a die roll like that this entire freaking game. They managed to get attacker surprise on a regular combat. They got 5 shifts and managed to do a DL102 on the defender with no option for the attacker, which meant they didn't lose anything. They could just advance after combat, and the Commonwealth units had to take a step loss and retreat. Now, they didn't lose, they lost their engineers, which, I mean, that's certainly a unit you wouldn't want to lose if you didn't have to, but I didn't want to lose any combat power, or as much combat power, so I had to make a tough choice there and chose to lose the engineers. But um, you can see that puts them back holding the river line, and having not lost anything, they're just in that much better shape. So, um, yeah, boy, if only Vici had gotten die rolls like that earlier, then, things might not be even as the current situation, but that certainly helps. That river is going to help them. Those guys continue to be DG'd, and then the armor stack that is there, that would have been uh, planned to be put into reserve if Vici hadn't chose to go first in turn 6. Now they're kind of up front, and that, and they can't overrun over the river. So this is one of those situations where I had Vici take a back-to-back turn. It wasn't like there was this huge thing that was going to happen if I did, but I really wanted to get units in better position and maybe make a counterattack, and that ended up working out very well for them. So I'm going to go over to the Commonwealth side of turn 6. They get a pretty good number of reinforcements that are going to be coming in here shortly, so that will be a boon. They're also going to get some air power. I'm really trying to figure out for the Commonwealth how to get enough supply up here to lay down an airstrip, build an airstrip, an airbase level 1, which costs a whole supply point, which is expensive. But I need to get my fighters up there because they're just at the mercy of the Vici Air Force. And I think if I pluck an airstrip down in Merjaun, that should put both of these areas under a patrol zone. So that's kind of the intention there. So we can protect our units a bit better from the plentiful Vici bombers that are causing disruption. So um, there you go. And then not much over in the Damascus sector. Really, anything happening over here are adjustments, slightly moving around. I am eyeballing a potential to maybe try to make something happen over here and kind of break through, but I don't have a huge amount of force to do that with. But it's certainly an option that I'm thinking about. I just don't know how well it's going to end up working out. So something I need to think through. But certainly not right now. Or I'll have to see what happens with the Commonwealth turn as Vici if I'm going to try to do that. So, all right, I'm going to go play that, and then we'll reach some mid-game thoughts. Okay, here we are after the Commonwealth turn. You can see with this kind of taken care of, this guy kind of holding the door in case, I don't know, I'm not even sure how or why Vici would try to do this, but if they try to make a maneuver out around, we at least got one step kind of walking over here or riding. We can pull it back up when the situation gets better. We still want to make sure that we have something resembling, backfield defenses. So I'm moving the Palmach forces over to here, and then you can see I'm trying to set up there. Both the fifth the fifth unit and the Free French unit are progressing down the way, trying to figure out how to have the supply network set up because we need to go this way, which doesn't have as good infrastructure, but also this way, which has good infrastructure but has tougher terrain that we're going to be dealing with. So kind of a careful approach, and we did do a fighter sweep on the airbase at Damascus, which forced the defender to abort, but ultimately didn't do too much other than I was hoping to do a step loss on the fighter, but that did not happen. We have other potential fighter sweeps I could have made, but it didn't make sense to do that. The one significant thing being our naval bombardment, which is really solid, deeged these guys. In cleanup phase, we removed our own, so we're kind of set up to maybe try to get across the river if we go first next turn, which I think with the Commonwealth going second this turn, if they go first next turn in turn 7, that would be beneficial, especially because over here, the reinforcements of the Commonwealth Air, which came in, so we got a whole bunch of uh, bombers, did fly in and managed to bomb the unit that was here, and that was outside the patrol zone of Rayak Air Base, I think. So I counted the hexes, and it was not within 10. So they managed to DG the unit there, disorganize it, and then we had an attack from the Commonwealth. It was a DL, 01, so we removed the single unit there, but we did have to retreat. I didn't want to lose a unit either. So we pulled back. And then our big stack of reinforcements, this set of red band units are coming up the middle to Mergeon, thinking I can overwhelm the center lane. That coastal lane, I think the naval barrages are keeping it alive despite losses and despite other challenges. So it feels like it'd be more beneficial to have these guys kind of swarm through. And I'm hoping now that we cracked that open, we have an opportunity to try to come out around with the cavalry and get behind these guys and cut them out of supplies. So if the Commonwealth can get initiative next turn, I do see this as a very strong back-to-back turn if we can make it happen. Now, that's the end of turn 6. So when we look at the, let me double check here the length of the scenario. I should just know this off the top of my head, shouldn't I? 21 turns. So for 21 turns, sorry for the free cam. I hope it doesn't make you dizzy. For 21 turns, we are 6 turns through it. We've completed 6 turns, so we are over a quarter of the way through it. And we can kind of see the game shaping up. We can also see where the game ends could occur. And I'm actually looking at the situation as the Vichy going, oh shit, we might have to pull out of Damascus and just rush a bunch of guys in front of Rayak Air Base and over to Damascus and just give up, Beirut, get in front of Beirut and abandon Damascus. Just straight up pull all these guys out of here because we're not going to be able to hold it. We're better off getting into the mountains. Damascus is certainly worth a lot of victory points, but that may enable us to still eke out something of a win if we can hold it. It's a long stretch of turns till the end game for Vichy to hold out, and I'm not optimistic about their chances. But anyway, I'm gonna take a quick cut here, and then I'll do some thoughts on the experience so far. I think now's a good, worthwhile time to reflect on what's going on with the game and kind of what I think of it so far. Okay, so we're a good quarter of the way through the game over that, and I think I can make some initial commentary so far. This isn't going to be a total replacement for what would be an end of game post-mortem review, but this is a good opportunity to check in. I think there is definitely something, and I think it has a lot to do with the map layout, that on turn 1, there is a lot of analysis paralysis, and if not for the starter guide, I definitely would have had a hard time getting rolling. And it just has to do with the way in the southern part of the map, just to kind of illustrate, like there's a lot more spiderweb interconnectivity here, and the unit placement at the beginning of the game is just weird enough that it makes it really hard to sense like what's the obvious thing to go do to make any sort of progress? And even your supply is placed in really odd places for whatever reason that is. I don't know why, historical reasons maybe, but it definitely feels weird. This whole area down here is just super weird to start with. The intersection of roads and the tracks and the rivers and just the way everything is set up is very weird. It feels like, to start with. Now, much later, we're now going into turn 7. A lot of that has gone away where I feel pretty comfortable, playing without having my hand held by Chip's starter guide. I know what's going on. I kind of know the situation. The situation here is my own from my play, and it's not on the rails. But that starter guide was actually a huge help in figuring out like what do I even do here, right? Maybe if I were to play this over again, I wouldn't need that starter guide. I'd say, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. But boy, I can I can imagine it being very intimidating to people because of that. Just what am I even looking at here? What does this stuff even really look like? How do I even make an effort? And through the very good luck of the Commonwealth early on, where they were able to kind of smash their way through those areas, we're now in a very more constrained, obvious front line situation where basically our lines are like that. That's the front line on the map. The lanes are clearer. Things are kind of coming into play where it's like, okay, each side knows what it has, where it has it. The supply situation is what it is. We know what that is, and now it is just simply you can focus more on what you want to do rather than this like I don't even know where to begin. Um, and what's a shame about this game in particular because of that, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, it's just it feels like now a missed opportunity. There are basically two scenarios in the playbook, the series book. There's the campaign, which starts from turn 1 and goes through the whole thing. And then there's a shorter one where I think it's just like 9 turns, but you still start from turn 1 and you just rate progress differently for victory. And it'll be interesting to kind of see where we're at that point to see, if we were playing the shorter campaign, would the Commonwealth be winning or be doing good enough to count for that? What the game is missing that I feel like would be very helpful, especially if you're going to look at Reluctant Enemies as like a new player's OCS game, is it would be very beneficial to have a scenario that starts midway through the campaign where, while the exact positions would be different than what you see on camera right now, if it were more, at that historical time frame where the fighting was occurring over here and somewhere over here, um, and you set up whatever the historical situation more or less was at that point in later June, mid June, later June, rather than the beginning of the game at June 8th, um, that would be easier for a new player because the playing pieces are kind of already in a logical place. And so if you're learning about how to do an overrun, how to do an attack, I need to learn how the supply network is supposed to work. Some of this stuff just got a lot easier once we've settled into the current game state. So if if somehow either the original designer or somebody can leverage the historical research that was done for this game and come up with a mid-campaign scenario, I think that would benefit this game a lot. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of the situation with the game The Dark Valley from GMT, where everybody wants to play Barbarossa, but that's a really hard scenario. You're better off starting with Case Blue or the Fall Blau scenario in that game to just learn to play it because you're not up against really weird constraints. Now that game, it's more about difficulty. Here, it's more of just analysis paralysis. But I think having a game map situation where things are kind of lined up clearly is much more beneficial for learning than somebody setting up turn 1 feeling like they don't know what they want to do, and they maybe either give up or they have a hard time getting started. Now, obviously, the starter guide is like a solve for that pain. Um, but it still feels like a missed opportunity ultimately. Um, the map here is so very interesting. I mean, it is. I mean, once you're the nice thing about OCS is once you're really playing it and you're in it and you're operating and you're not looking at the whole map, you're really starting to like zoom in mentally on a particular part of the front or where the fighting is happening. You do really appreciate the terrain, the way the map is set up, the fact that okay, now we're in rough terrain or hills, and we don't have the capability to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, there are tracks. Maybe we can send somebody down that track, but knowing that the track is going to be hard to get supply through, so at best maybe you're just trying to hold that position. The rivers do matter. I foolishly lost my engineer. I took it as a step loss because I didn't want to lose more combat power because I didn't want to lose the position. But then immediately after that, I got a PAX replacement, which means had I just said, "Hey, I'm going to replace this with an infant," I'm going to take the step loss on the infantry unit. I could have replenished it, and instead I lost my engineer, and I can't get it back. That could come back to bite me as the Commonwealth when I'm dealing with these other river things going on. Um, and there's still plenty of rivers to be concerned about through the rest of the game. So that's kind of an interesting bummer, but that's where things, the unit differential, uh, the uniqueness of the unit types does come into play to make the situation better or worse or whatever the case is out there. Um, the supply situation as it stands right now, I think the Vici is sitting pretty happy with its supply. It's consistently getting, some supply points. It's shepherding them pretty well. I feel like we have enough supply to maintain what we're doing, which is really defending. Where the Commonwealth, man, we're just constantly on the edge of running out of supply, and now we have even more units on the board with this reinforcement. And just having more units is one thing. Being able to supply all those units for offensive operations is another, and that's really tricky. And it's sort of where like the intent we have here of trying to get like these guys to go. Let's see, one, two, three, four, five, and cut off some of this supply uh, is pretty important. Like, and then so like we could see that start to really play into things um, to cut off these guys if we get to go again. And if we were to do that, we won't have to spend supply to eliminate these guys. And that to me is kind of the big key thing. If we can get those guys stuck and not let them get home or break out or whatever, they could use internal stocks to try to make an effort. Um, we could potentially eliminate one, two, three, in an artillery, so four units without much in the way of supply expenditure, and that's really huge. Like that's really strong if we're able to do it. So I think there's certainly that aspect of things that the like you want to if you can eliminate units without spending supply, that's golden. That's beautiful. We have the opportunity here to do that potentially with our cavalry on horseback, riding through the hills, outflanking the Vici position. And as you start to like look at those situations and you get more used to the system, um, I do feel like you start to get a better sense of how much this system can portray. Uh, it's hard to sometimes look at this stuff and go, well, it's hex and counter, it's chits with NATO symbols on them, attack factors and movement factors, but it really starts to come together. Um, and so much of my thinking changes from, if this were just some other game, let's say it's a Dark Exporter by Ted Racer, and it's a chit pool game on Operation Exporter. I suspect that game would not have me really freaking out about supply because it's just a different system, a system that doesn't focus on supply, and that's OCS's real claim to fame. But it is remarkable how important that ends up being of just, gosh, I can pile units into this valley, but I only have a couple tokens worth of supply to operate with. And if the Vici do attack me, I might not spend the supply and defend at half strength. And that, like, that's a decision. That's a decision space, in most systems you don't have to worry about. The fact that I have a preponderance of force now in this valley with this additional uh, force that's come in, this additional, I guess it's a division, I don't know if it's considered a division. I have to look at that, but the force that's coming through here, right? In any other game, that's just a huge amount. That's a huge amount of extra units. That's a huge amount of extra combat power. But the reality is, I can't just decide to attack with everybody. And in fact, while I had 4 units here attack that could have attacked this hex, that would have been too much supply expenditure. And I wouldn't have had any to have on defense on the next turn if Vici gets initiative. So I attacked with only 2 units, and the defender was DG'd, so it still ended up being 4-1 in, I think it was very close terrain, but we managed to get a good roll, and it worked out. Even if we had to retreat, we got the job done. And those are layers of decision making. Again, you don't necessarily see in very many other games. The fact that I'm like, okay, I could attack with 4 units, but that's probably too much. Can I get the job done with less? Turns out I could. I would have rather have not had to retreat, but I still did what I needed to do, which was take another unit from Vici. And we're starting to clear the way, and we have the potential to really take advantage of the situation. And that's really interesting. Like, that's a decision space that is very cool. And I can definitely see where or why OCS folks, people who really play OCS a lot, what they appreciate about the system. Definitely getting that. The decision space between movement mode and attack mode, and then being DG'd, and we've been seeing a lot of trading of DGs, disorganized states where you might spend the supply to DG somebody just so they are less likely to attack you on their turn. They have to wait till the end of their turn to get rid of that DG, which might save you some it saves you a turn to get in better shape with your own supply. Or you got to spend what you're spending to do the DG, but maybe you're doing air power. In this case, maybe we're doing it with naval, and that's very helpful. So you're trying to get the right DGs to occur. You're willing to risk a combat. You're hoping to not get defender surprise. Maybe you get really lucky and it's attacker surprise. All of those things really matter. And then, given similar action ratings, most of the time you're not going to see surprise. So, in some respect, I kind of, I had thought about it of going, well, in this game, maybe you're going to get surprised a lot, and that's going to make the die rolls really weird. But the reality is, unless there's a very significant action rating differential, most of the time with the bell curve, you're not going to get any sort of surprise unless the die rolls really give you something unexpected. So there is a nice level of, I don't really know what's going to happen with this combat. I can have some reasonable expectation. And that goes even beyond a normal CRT. It's just, yeah, that surprise die roll could shift things 6 columns or 1 column. You just don't know. And that, not just the fog of war of, if you're playing opposed, the sort of hidden unit, you don't know exactly what's underneath each stack. I'm playing solitaire, so I know. But still, each combat, it's like, man, something really wacky could still happen. I just don't know. And I got to hope for the best and plan even more than I would normally plan in other games for disasters. And just have to eat the crap sandwich if it comes up, which is still very, very interesting. Now, for Vici, I can definitely say they're on the back foot at this point. And just to show you, because I've been keeping track for the losses and reconstituting units. For Commonwealth, you can see I screwed up because I was trying to keep track based on where I was putting the dead pile, and I had to switch it because I was being dumb. 7 units lost total for the Commonwealth. They've gotten 2 back. And a lot more for Vici, right? 20 20 steps lost, 20 units lost, and they've gotten 6 back, so they're really sub, 14 um, from where they started with. The fact that they don't get very many replenishments, I mean, it does begin to get to that death spiral. And more now, especially, I need to get some guys moved out of the Damascus area to help solidify the other lanes. Um, and comparatively speaking, the Commonwealth also gets replacements, which means that even if we said, hey, we've lost 7 units and we've gotten 2 back, which means we're sub 5 total, uh, the reality is we get personnel replacements, and we've already gotten them once before, and now I have another one. So really, it's like the Commonwealth has only lost functionally like 3 or 4 units off the board, not counting commandos, and they've gotten more reinforcements. So there is a numbers advantage that's starting to play against the Vichy. The really big thing I think that matters there is the longer the game goes on, the less Vichy will have to operate with, and they're playing against the clock, which does incentivize to some degree a reason for Vichy to be aggressive early and maybe try to heavily disrupt the Commonwealth, so as the weight of numbers helps them over the course of the game, if you've knocked them off balance, then you're delaying their sort of inevitable numbers advantage. I did not do that, and I think that's going to contribute to the loss of Vichy. I maybe could have pushed through here. At this point, I don't think I can afford to now, because this is just going to become too much of a problem. And we don't want to let this become a new avenue. Like if we come down here, screw up, lose a unit, and then Commonwealth can just zip through here. We don't want that to happen. So there was a point where I think some of these units could have pushed down this road and disrupted the Commonwealth, but it's too late to do it now. And I was too cautious. I didn't do it, and maybe I should have. That's a strategy worth exploring. There's also the whole thing where I could have come beyond this defensive line and try to do more desert fighting. If you read the historical notes, the Vichy commander thought that was a bad idea. I do think it's risky, because had I come down here and tried to do more in this space, while there were still Vichy units distracting down over here, um, it could have been valuable. It could have done something good. But if I lost a bunch of Vichy units down here, maybe they're getting surrounded, like we did do to some units to the Vichy. Then there's less to defend Damascus, and then in our case, there's even fewer units to try to help these other lanes that might be in trouble. Where, again, I think what I might need to do is pull some of these guys back to here, give up Damascus, solidify strength elsewhere. I'll have to double check, what are all the victory point impacts of doing that, and if it is worthwhile doing it. But it's something I now have to think very carefully about. Do I even try to hold Kisweh and Damascus and Mez, Meze? I don't know. That's going to start to become a difficult decision making process, which is good. I mean, that's what you want in this game. So, and now that the Commonwealth has air power, and their air power is basically almost on even footing with the Vichy air power, and generally speaking, the British have better naval barrages on the coast compared to the Vichy, and have it more often. All the advantages are now really starting to sit in the Commonwealth camp, and it's really going to be how fast can we shut down these Vichy forces? How quickly can we get beyond the current defensive lines and get into Rayak Air Base? All of those things are going to now come in a hyper focus, and we're not even halfway through the campaign. And of course, as I've mentioned, supply may be the thing that really limits what the Commonwealth can do. But all that and more soon to be uncovered in the game. I am having a good time now that I'm past the analysis paralysis. I've gotten my legs underneath me on the game. It is interesting to see kind of what happens, even without the fog of war on the hidden units underneath the top unit stuff. As a solitaire experience, again, those die rolls keep it interesting. I just don't know what will happen, so it's taking those risks. So anyway, thanks for excuse me. Thank you for watching, guys. That's going to be this video. I think what we covered in turns 3 through 6, so 4 turns. That's pretty rock solid. I think if we do the next, or do the same number of turns in the next video, that will get us about halfway through the game, or almost halfway through the game, if unless we get some kind of early victory. And I probably won't do the same level of, you know, commentary on the tail end of the next video. So we may end up doing even more turns depending on how it goes. So yes, more to come, guys. We're trucking along now after that long gap from before, and we'll be reaching climactic events in the campaign here very soon. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Keep gaming.